So let's see about styling them differently. There's a few ways we could do that. So when I actually looked at your source, those of you who volunteered your code, I can't remember if it was either Matt's or Eli's, I can't remember, but I actually looked at one of yours and noticed that you were using .style to do it. Do you remember which one of you did it that way? Did one of you do that? Oh, wait, it wasn't. It was someone back there. Who? Oh, that was you, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, cool. So, to do that, once you have the element, because remember, once you've created this element, you can do all the stuff to it that you can do with elements that you grabbed off the page, right? It's just an element as a JavaScript object. So you have access to all the same properties. And it turns out one of those properties is called style. So just for the sake of experimentation, I'm gonna do this in the browser so we can fool around with it and see it happen in real time. So I have my Evans span selected here. And by selecting it in the elements panel, it's assigned to $0, and I can use that in the console. You understand that's just a DevTools trick. That doesn't work. You can't like put $0 in your code. Yeah.
Why don't you add a break after the CATFA span to have we can space out after in American edges?
Yeah, I'm going to, but I'm going to do it with style. I'm going to do it with style instead of by like putting an extra element in there. Get it? So like I don't want to have to throw a line break in there because I can do that with style, right? So that's what I'm going to do.
Can you also like add a class or something?
Exactly. Yes. Totally. Which is ultimately where I'm going to go with this. But I'm going to show you two ways. So now that I have this assigned to $0, I can just mess with that span here. So I could do any number of things with that. So .style gives me access to every CSS property that there is. And in this case, since we're using JavaScript, now we don't put dashes in between multiple words, we camel case it. So like background dash color becomes background capital C color, right? I don't want to change the background color necessarily. So one thing I could do, we talked about block level elements versus inline elements yesterday. So block level elements are those that have line breaks before and after automatically, like just inherently, like paragraphs. Paragraphs are always going to have a line break before and after, right? Headings are always going to have a line break before and after. So those are block level elements. And divs are the generic block level elements. But span, which is what I use here, are inline. But I could change that with the display property in CSS. So I could say display equals block, and all of a sudden it's on a new line. So that's one way we could do that. We could just make it a block level element. So we could have just made it a div instead of a span in the first place if that's what we wanted to do. But you could do that manually with style like this. And then I could do whatever else I want. $0.0.style.color equals cornflower blue. Why not? Woo! That name just amuses me. That's one of the named CSS colors. You know about colors at all in CSS? So probably the most common thing to do is to use hexadecimals. So RGB, red, green, blue. Two different ways to do RGB colors in CSS. One is RGB and pass in values, and it's going to be, there are 256 possible values, 0 through 255. So red comes first. So if I said 255, 0, 0, that's going to be red. Except if I'm using JavaScript to do this, I need to make it a string. There we go. Now it's red, right? So if I said 0, 255, 0, that's going to be green. RGB in that order. And to some degree, you just get used to, you start memorizing some things and figuring out how these things mix. Or you could use some kind of tool that lets you pick the color and assign it that way. The other way to do RGB colors is with, and this is probably the most common way to specify colors in CSS, is to say hash and then 6 hexadecimal digits. You know what hexadecimal is? Computer science majors, you've probably done that. So that is a base 16 number system as opposed to decimal, which is base 10. So the digits in that case, since there aren't 16 or 15 digits, there's 0 through F. 0 through 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. So F is 15. So 0 through 15, 16 possible values. 2 digits each for red, green, and blue. So FF 0000 would be red, etc. So anyway, we could do this using the style property if we wanted to. So we could say className. In addition to setting its text content, we could say classSpan.style.display equals block. Refresh the page. Let's try this again. So let's see, we did CATFA, Captain America the First Avenger. So Captain America Winter Soldier cause. Also Evans. Yeah, on a separate line. So then we could have Captain America Civil War. Caw! Also Chris Evans. Cool. See? We can do it that way. But as Joe, I think it was, asked, could we just apply a class to it? Yeah, we totally could. So let's see if we can figure that out. So here I still got this span selected, so it is $0, so I can fiddle with it in the console. And let's just see what we can do. So $0 is my span. Dot, let's just start trying to do that. Class, okay, I see classList and className. So what's classList? DOM token list. And I see square brackets, so it's probably another one of those array-like things that are technically not arrays with a length of 0. And then there's class, what was the other one? className. Okay. Let's look at something that actually has a class on it. So I think our div did, right? Or our li. No, that doesn't have a class either. Nothing here has a class. Let's put a class on something, by golly. Let's put a class on this div. Just testing. All right. Let's find that div. Here it is. So now this div is $0. So $0 dot class name is the string just testing. Class list. Okay, now I've got something in there. So it looks like I could say class list square bracket 0 and get just testing. Cool. So I can get it in like a list, or I can get it as a string. So if I wanted to add a new class to this, anybody know in CSS if you have more than one class on an element, how you do that? Anybody? Nobody's done this? So multiple classes are separated by space. So just testing, seriously, just testing. You do that, and then you have two different classes. So let's check that out. Okay, now we have two classes on there. So $0 dot class name will give us exactly the string that we put in there. So it'll separate them by a space. The class list, I'm hoping, gives us that array-like thing with two different things in it. Yep, I got square bracket 0 is just testing, square bracket 1 is seriously. And length is 2. So that works. So to add a new one, it looks like I could just like append to the class name string, but that seems really error prone. So I bet classList is going to be better for that. Can I push? Doesn't look like that's a thing. Push? Nope, not a function. Because remember, this is not technically an array. It's another kind of thing. But it looks like add is suggested here. So how about add? I want to add a third class to it called, I don't know. What'd you have for breakfast today, Hennick? Granola bar. Granola bar. Aw. Oops. Yeah, I can't put spaces inside a class name. Granola dash bar. Cool. Let's look at my HTML. Hey, there it is. Granola bar. So why are we doing this again? Oh, yeah. Because we want to put a class on this. So instead of styling it directly inside the JavaScript, what if we could just add a class to it? That seems better to me. And I'll do that before I add the text content, just because that seems logical. So ChrisSpan, let's say classList.add, and let's just add the class Chris. And I suppose up here we could add a class to this too. FlickSpan.classList.add name. So let's add one. Thor Ragnarok, which Chris Hemsworth. There we go. Let's inspect this. Now I go span class name, span class Chris. So then we could actually write our styles in our style sheet, which feels a little better. So this is all inside the LI here. It seems like we could classify these LIs just in case we have another bulleted list somewhere else on the page. I don't know. It feels like the LIs should each have a class of flick to me, because that's what each item in the list is. Do you get that? Do you get why I want to do that? So I want to do that because I anticipate styling these things somehow, and it seems totally appropriate to have a class on there. So we could totally do that. Which the LI we're creating from scratch here too, aren't we? Create element LI. So before I go appending children to it, I could say item dot class list add flick. And I want to point something else out. Thor, the Dark World, also Hemsworth. So let's find that here. Here's the LI. So now I've got that selected, so it's $0. So if I say $0 dot class list, and I try to add flick again, it's not going to complain at me, but it's not going to add the same class twice either. So that's kind of the difference between add and push there. That's why we're not just using array push here, besides the fact that we can't. That's why they don't do it as a normal array, because it should have some special behavior when you try to add an item that's already there, right? Arrays don't stop you from adding duplicates, but we need to stop you from adding duplicate classes. Predictably enough, there's also a remove on class list. So once we've done all this, we could start to style those things differently. So we could say, so something with a class of Chris, we could say display block. That'll put it on a line underneath. See how that looks. Does it do what we want? Gifted, Evans. Yeah. Line underneath. Get it? Questions? So what we really learned there was how to add classes to something that we've created or grabbed from the page. So once you actually have a DOM element as a JavaScript object, you can add classes to it this way, which is sometimes an easier way to try to apply styles, because it'd be a lot easier to just add some more stuff to this. If we wanted them to be red or something, it'd be a lot easier to do this than it would be to clutter up our JavaScript even more. Right? We'll try to keep our JavaScript as close to pure behavior as we can. So add class names to the elements we create. Questions? Anything else from the homework we haven't done? Yeah, more than one function.